Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for those who want their money questions answered.
Join us as we talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives, because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom. Lovely listeners, welcome back to another episode of It's No Secret. Today we're chatting about country living versus city living in New Zealand. Now, this is a big topic as rising house prices in the main centres around New Zealand, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, can often encourage city dwellers to consider a less busy and perhaps cheaper lifestyle. But there are obviously pros and cons, and we thought that we would talk about that today because, Christine, you're yet to buy a house in Auckland, so maybe
Maybe I'm moving to Gore.
Exactly. Well, after this, we'll determine. Maybe that's on the cards. But to set the scene, I guess, house prices are really the trigger for a lot of people with this. So we'll use that as the starting point because that's kind of where I think everyone starts to anchor the decision around. So
Nice.
To give us a bit of update as to where median house prices are currently sitting across the major cities. This is as at September 2024. In Auckland, median house price $970,000. Followed by Wellington, $792,000 and Christchurch, $765,000. So
We're moving to Christchurch. Okay, got it.
Can't quite go to the country, but you're going to go to Christchurch potentially.
Yeah.
Now, they're all relatively high amounts of money, obviously. 20% deposit on $970K is
Not insignificant.
Yeah, exactly. Decent sum of money, which is why we talk a lot about this podcast of how to save for a home and all those other things, why you want to start investing. So yeah, I guess we don't really need to talk about the fact that is expensive. And one of the main benefits of moving outside of the city is that there are quite a few towns around New Zealand where the median house price is less than $500,000. So that's really a draw card for people. But yeah, what's your initial thoughts as someone that's yet to buy a home?
Well, I actually thought that Auckland might be a bit higher.
Okay, so you're pleasantly surprised.
I think I have seared in my brain Auckland house prices being $1 million or 1.1 or
it's $30,000 off it.
Yeah,
so.
Still, I think there's something about the round number of $1 million that your brain attaches to.
Okay, fair.
But I also thought that maybe Christchurch actually might be a bit cheaper than $765 because that feels quite high.
Yeah, I was also surprised at Wellington. I thought Wellington and Auckland were a little bit more on par, but that was also maybe just my, I don't know,
read of
my read of my non-official property experience.
Yeah, but I also think that the median price of $500K for the regions makes a lot of sense. That feels a bit more, doable, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's hard maybe with this topic is okay, there's only 3 major cities. Sorry, people that live in Hamilton. But there's 3 major cities. But when you then thinking about, okay, well, where am I going to go live in the country? Your opportunities are endless. There's so many places that you could otherwise live throughout New Zealand. And so when you kind of hear maybe a headline or an article talking about country versus city, it's well, what's the country place? It could be anywhere. It could be Northland. It could be deep Southland. It could be somewhere in the middle. Yeah, it's probably not Tauranga anymore because that's also quite expensive.
It's a mini Auckland city now.
Exactly. But I think that bit is also quite hard.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Christine? How would you start narrowing down your options?
Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking, I feel like there's got to be some regions or some smaller towns that are more expensive than others in terms of, or just, I guess it's typical of every city. There's suburbs within those regions that are going to be more expensive. For example, in Hawke's Bay, from my very vague knowledge, I understand that Havelock North is typically more expensive than Napier. And so I think it does also matter where you're looking within that region. You can't just generalize as to,
say the whole region,
the east of the country or same with New Plymouth, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And, but yeah, I definitely, it's something that's crossed my mind in terms of also living the Kiwi dream. I think that a lot of us probably have this perception of how we might have grown up. And I mean, speaking for myself, growing up in Kerikeri, we grew up on a 10-acre block with horses, pigs, the whole thing.
Yep.
And so trying to emulate that for my kids in today's, day and age feels a lot harder or would potentially require some movement in terms of location for me to be able to do that at a cost that was reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess also size of property matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because I was just thinking about like this decision point really comes down to like what's your motivation?
Yeah.
Because I think the obvious con that we haven't talked about, but we will get into a bit more is, well, what are you giving up moving to a country location or a like country town rather than living in a big city? And for most people, that's something to do with like their work or their level of income or their potential job opportunities, or maybe even moving away from family and their support networks, which has a cost associated with it that's perhaps not necessarily like monetary.
Yeah, for sure.
So then it's like, okay, well, what's your motivation? And is your motivation that you absolutely have to be a homeowner and you want the 800 square meter block and you want the land and the space and you know, the 4 bedrooms? If that is your number one motivator, then this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, that actually is a really good point because we rented our house when growing up as well. We didn't own that. And I think, you know, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford to live on that kind of lifestyle if we were buying it.
Right.
And so, that is a good point as well, as like the motivation around the lifestyle. Does it have to require you also buying a house, or could you rent in that place to get that as well? Yeah. But I also think it's like idea versus reality, because I think it's very easy to paint this picture about how amazing it is to be, you know, living by the beach or, you know, with stacks of land or whatever. But the reality also in terms of leaving your networks, career, community, like all that kind of stuff is definitely, there's a non-financial cost to that as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I guess as well, it's, you know, how much value do you place on being a homeowner and being able to tick that box if that's the number one thing? And is that ultimately your number one driver? Or if you're just deciding to move to the country because you're sick of the city, then that's an entirely different motivator that then I think has a positive financial outcome because things are in the country can potentially be cheaper. Yeah. So that could be good. But if, you know, I think a lot of this is kind of motivated around people suffering from like housing affordability and potentially cost of living affordability and looking for alternatives to raise a family or live in New Zealand.
Could you also say though, just to counter that it could be more expensive to live in the regions because typically shipping, like to get stuff to you, like less
you probably
competition.
have to drive a lot more. You like, you know,
fuel
what I mean, you're
costs,
potentially a lot more reliant on like having cars and being able to drive yourself for transport.
Yeah.
You know, you might have a proportionately less expensive property, but the running costs of that property are potentially the same. Maybe not rates, but like, you know, there's a lot of things that neutral will be on par the same, electricity, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, you know, perhaps, being outside of like a main town, you've got things to consider there, schooling costs.
True,
you know, depending on where you are. I think sometimes that then requires like kids later in life to say be boarders.
Yeah, for sure.
Depending on what local schooling access you have, all those kinds of things. Being able to travel back to see your family and friends. I think it's one of those things like having had the experience of being the person that's moved away and then also being told this so many times over by my husband, who previously was the person that moved away from his family, is like the onus that I think you don't understand when you move away from your family is that like the onus is on you to return.
So true.
It's not on them to come visit you. It just doesn't happen. And it's the same with
Mama's listening.
and it just it's the same with your friends. And it's just that weird thing. It's like you chose to move. Yeah. If you want to see people, you have to do the thing. And that's a really hard pill to swallow because that costs money. But, you know, factoring that in, particularly if, let's say, you did grow up in Auckland and your parents are here and then you decide to move out of Auckland because you want to have kids and a family home, and then, like, how do you factor in the grandparent experience, those types of stuff?
It's so true.
But if you would ask the internet and I guess, like,
look purely at numbers.
OneRoof, they make it sound really positive. And this is timely because this week there was an article that came out titled "Couple Use Their Auckland Deposit to Buy a House in Gore." And I feel like, oh, this is a spicy little headline, like real kind of teaser there.
Yeah.
So let's dig into that a little bit because on face value, that sounds pretty great. So I don't even really know where Gore is.
I'm like, I was like, you sounds great. I'm like, I've never been to Gore. I don't know what it's like to be there.
I know that there's that giant fish there.
Oh, you know, I've driven through it. Yeah. Okay.
Like, is it between Christchurch and Invercargill?
Kind of. Tim as a Ashburton local was telling us maybe.
to anyone listening, in my defense, I'm from Australia.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to
I
all
don't
the
know about
South
Christine's
Islanders.
defense.
Can you tell I grew up in Northern?
Okay, so it's not far
Okay.
from Invercargill. Yeah, okay. More inland than I thought.
Yeah. But
Which is weird because why has it got a fish? Or is it like trout? Is it a trout? It's an inland fish. It's not a sea fish.
I don't know. That's a good question.
This is definitely becoming a real. Oh no. Okay, so these people moved to Gore
Yeah.
from Auckland, which is a fair way. So looking at that, their closest cities, I guess, would be like Invercargill, I'm assuming is a bit bigger than Gore, Dunedin, or obviously driving to like Queenstown
yeah.
or
Alexandra. Was that
or even Christchurch, but still fair way from Christchurch.
Yeah.
So you're probably driving to Dunedin to like fly
Yeah, right. Yeah.
to Auckland
and
or
hospital
somewhere.
as well.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. So couple use their Auckland deposit to buy a house in Gore. How amazing. So some real estate agents quoted in this article said that houses in Gore trade for around $400,000.
Okay.
Now, this couple of key points. They bought an entire house mortgage-free with what was their full deposit.
Yeah.
So they basically, let's just assume they've bought it for essentially $400,000.
Yeah.
So their deposit was $400,000.
Yeah.
So they were planning on buying a $2 million property in Auckland.
Yeah, wow.
If that's a $400,000 20% deposit.
Yeah.
Now, not going to pass judgment on anyone, but that's a fair lifestyle downgrade in my humble opinion because I'm like, my house doesn't cost $2 million and it's in a central city location in Auckland. And sure, it's not on 800 square meters, which some of these properties that they were showing was, and it's not 4-bedroom and all of that. But they've made a fairly significant change, right?
Yeah.
Kind of reading between the lines from what they were intending to do to what they have done. The other thing, I thought this was hilarious. The Harcourt's agent was quoted saying that they were like, oh my God, this was going to be our house deposit that we missed out on. We're so stoked that we've bought this house. Also, key point, they actually bought 40 minutes north of Gore, so they're even further out than perhaps we had originally said. But if we're looking at the just general makeup of Gore versus Auckland, couple of key fun facts. This is brought to you by Stats NZ, thanks to the 2018 census. Population of the Gore district, about 12,500 people. Median age, 43, not too bad. Median income, just under $31,000, with 12% of the population in Gore earning over $70,000. And home ownership percentage is pretty high. It's 57%. So doing pretty well.
Yeah. Also, for context, I know this was 2018 census, but 2024 median salary of New Zealand is roughly around 75 grand. So
yes,
the fact that 12% earn over 70K, which at the time may be slightly over the median, is, I would say, it's not high.
No.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. It's definitely not. Whereas if we compare that to Auckland, so same 2018, a little bit out of date, but Auckland district population is 1.5 million. Median age 35. We're a bit more youthful up here in the big city. Median income is higher, but not significantly higher, but 35,000. But I think more importantly, there's over 20% of people that are earning over 70,000. So that's really saying to us that there is the opportunity for a large variation of incomes, which checks out. You would expect that in a city situation where there's, everything from cleaning jobs through to like corporate roles.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that much larger variation, whereas in a smaller district region, you're potentially not going to have as larger variation of roles available.
Yeah.
And no surprise, but home ownership percentage is much lower than Gore. It's 45%.
Yeah.
Or was 45%.
I feel like I need to eat my words a little bit because 20%, although it obviously 20% earning over 70K is higher, it doesn't feel like it's that much higher. Like I would expect that number to be higher, don't you think?
Not when I think you look at the median.
Being
if it was
around
averages,
75,
potentially,
okay.
but it's probably the average income that's closer to 70,000 now.
Yeah.
Because the average is obviously always super pulled up by the top and top end. But and this of course is median income of people that answered
that's true. Yeah. Okay.
In 2018.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. Interestingly, though, which I thought was a little sneaky sentence that they just put in this article that would really catch people out, and I'm hoping you haven't even read it yet, but based on what I've told you to date, Christine, how old do you think this couple was?
If they have 400K saved, that's like a significant sum of money.
Yeah.
But if they were also really good savers from, their 20s or whatever, let's say, early 20s, maybe they're like 35.
Right. They're in their early 20s.
I'm sorry, where are they getting 400K? Like
parents, family. So the thing that I thought was quite sneaky is that the Harcourt's agent said that most of the North Island buyers that were heading to his patch at the moment were young couples in their early 20s. So
what am I doing wrong? Like, what?
Well, you're not moving to Gore. That's the starting point, I think.
Yeah, okay. Sorry,
but
not
I
the point.
thought that was really important to highlight because exactly to your point, I kind of came in with the assumption that this would be someone that is closer to the average age of first home ownership in New Zealand, which we know is like 37.
Yeah.
So, most people are not buying their houses in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And this kind of then also comes back to the motivation piece because I'm like, if someone in their early 20s is prepared to move to a regional district where they're going to then have different income earning capacity and career opportunities, which also may suit them fine. So I'm not passing judgment on that. Yeah. But if they're prepared to do that in their 20s for then essentially the remainder of their life, then it's really clear to me that being a homeowner is like their number one primary motivation.
Yeah. I also find it interesting though, because if you think about the potential growth of that region or the value of that property, I'm obviously making assumptions because I don't have the data in front of me, but I would think that the property value is probably going to grow at a faster rate in a main Met or Auckland versus Gore, right? Yes. And so...
Well, because you have the population increase to support it. That's essentially the underlying assumption that makes exactly what you're saying true. It's you're going to have more people moving and coming into Auckland for work opportunities and putting pressure on the property market, similarly with Wellington or Christchurch, than you would in any of the particular regions.
Yeah.
And because of that, you therefore have higher growth rates in your property prices. Yeah,
makes complete sense. And so then to your point of buying the property is the key motivator, then I go, well, what's the key motivator behind buying the property? Because is it for capital gains? Potentially not.
I'd say not.
It's lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd say lifestyle or just to your point of needing to fulfill the kind of dream.
Yeah. Have the backyard, do that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so, interesting. Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
Which is fascinating because I'm if I think of you, I'm I would say you might not agree, but I'm just going to blatantly say this. Your primary motivator is not to own a house.
No, it's not.
So I'm this is why I'm you're never moving to Gore.
No, I'm not.
To be mortgage free.
To move to the Hawke's Bay though. That's quite cool.
Yeah, you probably still have to spend $2 million.
Yeah, literally.
To buy something that you want.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
I think, it really comes back down to the motivation and why is it that you're doing it. And as we've talked about many times, there's no right or wrong with these scenarios. One of the things that I did find interesting as I was perusing a bit of the data on Stats NZ and looking at a few of the areas that Tim very kindly decided to highlight for us, two of which, well, I know where Invercargill is and I know where Ashburton is. I'm a little bit iffy on Greymouth. But we were basically highlighting 3 other regions in the South Island where you can buy, the median sale price is also under 500K. So median sale price actually in Ashburton is just over 500K. But roughly speaking, you could probably buy something in the realm of $430,000 to $510,000 for, in those areas. Now, there's fairly small population sizes, so that's something to seriously consider. And to your point, it's is the reality versus the dream the same? How are you going to experience living in a much smaller area before you get there? The other thing that I found really interesting is if you are considering this, go and have a look at the median age. They have the median age of these places because whilst Tim has highlighted Greymouth as an area that is actually quite cost effective, the median age is 53.
And it's a population of 8,000.
53 is the median.
Do you know what?
If you're moving there at 22, what are you doing on your, what? You're probably going to the RSA on the weekend and hanging out with a 75-year-old. And that is fine if that's what you enjoy doing. But know what you're getting yourself into, people.
Do you know what? This makes me think of Kerikeri.
Okay, great. Were you at the RSA?
Growing up in Kerikeri, that was we used to joke about it being a retirement village.
It is.
And the population when I grew up there was 5,000.
Yeah.
And so, but I think now it's evolved to where a lot of Aucklanders are moving there. And so I think
It'll take a lot of them to reduce the median age, though.
But also, like, you know, I think being mindful of like what it could become. I think that's, you know, potentially a pro on that as well.
For sure.
If you have that hope, and I know that, I mean, from what I've heard, Ashburton's a bit of an up-and-coming place as well. It's getting a lot of investment.
Median age of Ashburton is a much more palatable 39, so I feel a little bit better about that. But I guess
median income 36K though.
Yeah, median income 36K, exactly. Bigger population, roughly 35,000, not quite as many as, say, in Invercargill, but potentially a little bit more accessible in terms of area because, you know, an hour's drive to kind of Christchurch, and also you can pop on over a slightly longer drive to like Queenstown and that. Whereas in Invercargill, you are a little bit more, 2 to 3 hours drive from basically Queenstown and Dunedin. So it's a little bit more secluded. But it really is about, I think, assessing the area. And, you know, because I think of like, imagine if I said to myself, we're going to move to Greymouth to like give our kids a better life. And then we get there and everyone's 65. Yeah. I mean, they might have some great babysitters. But that's probably the kind of thing that you need to really like look at. And it's why people say like go on holiday in these. I mean, I don't know if you're holidaying in Greymouth. I hope some people don't listen to this.
Oh no, the Greymouth people are going to come at us.
I know. No, but it's like you probably need to go there and spend some time there just seeing if you could live there. Exactly what it's like, get a feel for the area.
But also caveat to that, holiday is very different to reality as well. Like I feel like rose-tinted glasses, you need to take those off when you're on holiday to be like, what's the public transport like? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I reckon also what's interesting about these three places is the industries relating to the place because, you know.
And the roles that you'll have as part of that.
Yeah. Like moving to the Waikato could be amazing for you if you're in farming. And like that's where the opportunity lies. But I guess also that could be for one person out of two. And then what's the impact also to the other person in that relationship?
And the household. So, I mean, industry is obviously going to vary. The jobs, how that's going to affect people. I feel like I'd be so fascinated to ask this couple that moved to Gore, like
what they did for work.
Yeah. Like, did you line that up before buying this house? Or
maybe we should try to get them on podcast.
Okay, let's try and find them.
If anyone in Gore knows these people.
I mean, we could reach out to the Harcourt's agent who we know. Well, I mean, we don't know. I know his name because that's in the article. And just see, well, actually, and he's also quoted the street and the suburbs. I reckon we could probably look up sales records and be like, who is the person that bought such and such Dacia Street in Launceston?
Just to clarify, if anyone knows Zach Andrews from Harcourt's, please send them our way.
Slide on into the DMs. We would love to chat to Zach and some of his clients.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would be fascinated to know what they did, what they've opted to do with work, if that was something that they thought of like after the fact or beforehand.
If they've kids.
I mean, actually, now that I think, I was going to say now that I think about it, they would have to know what they're doing for work if they got a mortgage, but they didn't get a mortgage.
Yeah, right.
Maybe they're just going to live and chill. I doubt it.
But also houses cost money, so like rates and stuff, right?
True. And they've obviously been able to save some coin, so okay.
Maybe they're, considering a career change because they're like, the financial pressure's off, I could retrain.
True.
It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. Yeah. We will do some investigating and report back.
Yeah.
But if this is something that is of interest to you or you're thinking about or you're just really over Auckland or Christchurch or Wellington and you're listening to this to make yourself feel better about the fact that you should stay here, because I feel like that's also a totally reasonable outcome.
Yeah.
What are some of the pros and cons of staying in the city? So pros, amenities.
Location.
Jobs.
Yeah. Networks.
Major airports, like international airports.
Yes. True. Just access, I think, also. To like.
Do you appreciate a holiday? Because if you live in Gore, it's really annoying to get to Honolulu.
Yeah, but it's so true. What do? You have to drive to Dunedin, fly to Auckland, and then go out.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would be expensive, so potentially cheaper. Yeah. What else?
Are you escaping your family or do you want to still see your family?
Yes.
And if you're trying to escape them, well, that's probably a pro for the country. But if you enjoy hanging out with them, then that's a pro for the city.
Yeah.
If they're already here.
Yes, true.
Although perhaps the opposite, if you've escaped, they're in the country and you've moved to the city, a la Tim. Public transport.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to throw a controversial one out there and be like government funding because I feel like the investment in infrastructure and things ongoing are always going to be favoured under government policy for
where the
cities, where the people are. Exactly. So there is a little bit of an argument to say that potentially some of the amenities in those areas and, you know, public transport networks and the like will get even better, disproportionately so to say like regions.
Yeah. Whether that's right or not is a whole nother conversation, but perhaps that's just the way that it is.
Exactly.
For now.
Politicians will put their money where the people with the votes are.
It's true. It's true. What
Cons
else?
to the city?
Cons to the city, traffic congestion. Everyone's always complaining about Auckland and driving, right?
Yep.
So, you know, you can have your windy long roads with no cars on it in the rural areas. With your manual cars that you don't get annoyed doing hill starts on Auckland hills, right?
True.
Yeah.
Smaller living spaces potentially is a con for some people.
Staying in the city.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. You're like kind of buying your way to space, really. Or there's more of it potentially in regions.
Yep. Exactly.
And then some could say higher cost of living, well, because of the obvious deposit of the house as well.
True.
So the ability to do that. But then I feel like that's a bit of a contentious one in terms of...
Well, it is because you're just like raw number, higher cost of living might be true, but your proportionate cost of living to income might not be. Do you know what I mean? Like it might just actually be,
For sure. I mean, an example of this is like Ollie and I are in an apartment in Parnell. We walk to work when I can be bothered.
Yep.
And so
in
then,
summer.
Yeah, exactly. When it's not raining, that we save on petrol costs. Like, you're not walking to work in the regions probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. What about the other side? Pros for moving to the country.
For the moving to the country, large properties, more space, less people, potentially being peaceful.
Yeah.
That also comes with some cons, which I'd say is like loneliness.
For sure.
And like community challenges. I mean, this is going to sound a bit ridiculous, but if you're in a city and you don't like your friends, like there's lots of other people here.
That's and
I think like that's also something that's quite hard if you're in a community area and you feel like you don't naturally fit in or it's not the right like cultural mix or whatever it is down there, it can be a lot harder. And so
for sure.
The loneliness piece I think is certainly a con.
Definitely. I think you could also flip that to be like, there's really great community around like grassroots, you know, like sport and stuff like that as well. So I think there's definitely two sides. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. What else?
Any other pros of the country?
Living out your childhood dream.
Yeah.
Of like having lots of space.
Not having a mortgage.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's
like
a big one.
Stress, I guess, reduction potentially because mortgages can be stressful.
Just needing like having less financial pressure because let's say you are buying somewhere where you just never have a mortgage and then you basically you have the pressure to like earn less money. Like perhaps you never have to work full time if you have kids and you're able to like have one person working full time and one person be a full-time stay-at-home parent or work part-time. Like you maybe have more flexibility from a financial standpoint in terms of what that looks like. And then also if you intend to stay there forever, you have to save less money for retirement.
That's true. Yeah, true. Good point. Also, there can be more career opportunities if you're in the right place for your industry. I would say that. So like to the point about Waikato and farming, you probably don't want to be in Auckland City if you're trying to get into farming, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think, you know, there can be career opportunity if it aligns.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cons for moving to the country?
Well, I mean, look.
The opposite of everything we've said.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say for me personally, it'd be like the limited access to services, like longer commutes. Fewer job opportunities is true, but it may also, to your point, be like fewer opportunities in all industries and all areas. And so it's probably then being realistic around like, am I comfortable transitioning into a different industry or a different type of role to perhaps what I used to do?
Yeah.
If I've been living in Auckland and working in a corporate job, am I going to have a corporate job in Gore or am I going to need to do something else?
Yeah, for sure.
And being okay with that, but that might be a con for some people. Change is a con.
Yeah.
People don't like change.
No, they don't.
And then I guess
I'm just laughing at this last one.
Like living in Gore is maybe a negative. I don't know. I'm sure people love it, but it's absolutely not for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I made that very clear though when we moved to Auckland. I was like, we're never really leaving Auckland because Melbourne to Auckland was the big enough downsize.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
So,
because what's the population of Melbourne? Like 5? Yeah.
That's like the whole country.
The country, yeah.
The whole of New Zealand, including Gore, is in Melbourne.
Yeah, literally. You know,
then some.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just going to for my loyalty to the South Island people, which I'm not loyal, you might want to have that in reverse and never say you lived in Auckland or were a Jaffa, right?
Sure.
So, we hear you too.
Exactly. And I think that that's also A-okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be really interesting, to see as well, like, education.
True,
like, do people that grow up in rural areas stay in rural areas, or do they experience city life through going to university and then tend to move back, like how that all kind of works. But we'll save that for another podcast. And really, if country living is on your radar, good luck.
Power to you.
Have fun. Yeah, all power to you.
Yeah.
Enjoy a cheaper life.
Yep. Or maybe not, depends.
Maybe not. So really the end message of this podcast is we don't know anything about anything, and
it's all subjective.
It is all subjective. If you want to live in the country, amazing. If you want to live in the city, amazing.
So, do what's right for you. I think though it's important to consider why you're doing it, and then the financial stuff is a byproduct of that, hopefully, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. If you're just making the choice for a financial reason and you have no greater motivation than that, I feel like that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So you're back in Auckland in 2 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Check in then.
Yeah. Okay. But also, if you've gone through this experience and you're really stoked you moved to the regions, please DM us. I'd love to hear the stories, because happy to be proven wrong.
Exactly. Well, on that note, big thanks to Colonel for enabling us to do what we do. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe wherever you're tuning in, whether that's video on YouTube or listening here on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch at It's No Secret NZ on Instagram. Send us episode requests, feedback and more, particularly if you live in the South Island and you listen to this episode and you're like, you guys don't know anything. So on that note, we will see you next week.
Bye.